Whoever you are, dogmatically declaring your decreed dominion, or eager to earn the epithet empathic. Hello. Before humans appeared on the scene and started littering the planet with species extinctions, as we investigated in episode 32, the average lifespan for any species of mammal was about 1 million years. Marine animals got a little longer, maybe around 4 million years. The current rate of animal extinction on Earth is estimated to be around 100 to 1,000 times higher than pre-human levels because of human activity. But even without our influence, it seems that Earth's ability to support life is surpassed only by its talent for eliminating it. To have made it this far in Earth's history, the lineage of every species alive today must have been able to change its shape, size, colour, behaviour, and anything else that gave it a competitive edge. And it must have done so repeatedly over the eons. In this respect, humans are no different to any other animal. Our climb to dominance has been tumultuous, bloody, miserable, and in no way guaranteed. But we should only congratulate ourselves on all that we've accomplished if we're willing to acknowledge the mistakes that we're yet to learn from. Now that we've wiggled free of that state of nature from whence we came, we have numerous options for sustaining ourselves into the future. We can choose to be benevolent or tyrannical to those creatures still in the arena. Whatever life is, it only got started on Earth once, or only once that's lasted. The unique collection of chemical processes that we call metabolism continue to spawn every living thing around today. This means that everything on Earth, from cactus to parakeets, mold, tardigrades, and guppies, have had the same 3.8 billion years in which to evolve. It also means, inescapably, that your ancestors must have lived in the ocean depths as well as on land. And they have, at various points, possessed fins and gills, laid eggs, scavenged at night, scurried through the undergrowth, dug burrows, and swung from the trees. If our species had ever so slightly changed track during its erratic natural biography, we'd be having a very different sort of conversation. Or, more likely, we wouldn't be here at all. But a common origin and colourful natural history are not the only things that we share with each individual plant, animal, and fungus. We are also united, in the most profound and dizzying way, by an insurmountable streak of good fortune. Every breathing human and mosquito stands shoulder to thorax as comrades in luck. So next time you consider clapping a mozzie out of the air, remember this. Both of you are the result of an unbroken chain of successful parental couplings, stretching right back into the primordial soup. Every descendant that contributed to that mosquito must have been skilled enough to find food, sneaky enough to avoid predation, healthy enough to keep its anatomy ticking over, and sexy enough to procreate. The same is true for all of your most distant relations. Your entire family line throughout history and prehistory, none of whom were crushed, eaten, drowned, dehydrated, starved, or mortally wounded before they could seed the next generation. Think about that whenever you find a six-legged swastika in the palm of your hand. Nearly 4 billion years down that vastly improbable chain, and you broke it. Over an itch. Being the most powerful creatures on the planet, it's easy to forget how many setbacks we humans have endured. Today's lofty position was extremely hard won. Around 500 million years ago, wriggling chordates, the ancestors of all backboned organisms, including us, nearly met their match. At that time, arthropods like trilobites and crustaceans dominated the oceans around the globe. Perhaps this is why we still seem to dislike invertebrates so much. Even when fish had their day, our kind swam amongst a downtrodden minority. The Sarcopterigi, or lobe-finned fish from which we descend, nearly went extinct 360 million years ago in competition with the Actinopterigi. You know, the real fish. We had to flop out onto land to secure an advantage. Even now, there are as many species of fish in the sea as all other backboned animals combined, including amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. But land-lubbing was no picnic, let me tell you. 200 million years ago, our kin, the four-legged reptilian founders of all future furry things, were swept aside by the dinosaurs. We barely hung on, skulking about at night, keeping a low profile, trying not to make eye contact. The meteor strike that we had secretly hoped for wasn't exactly a godsend either. It made way for rodents rather than our own descendants. 45 million years ago, when we were first cracking our dexterous primate knuckles, Earth's ruling elite were the better designed ancestors of today's rats and mice. Our last competitive brush with defeat came around 20 million years ago, when the self-acclaimed great apes got kicked out of Africa by the far superior monkeys. Leaving orangutans in Eurasia, the common ancestor of gorillas, chimps, and humans snuck back to Africa about 10 million years later, presumably while the monkeys weren't looking. Hot off the press, our genus Homo, containing all modern humanoid species, is perhaps a modest 2 million years old. And how did Earth serenade our latest foray out of Africa? By erupting Mount Toba, around 74,000 years ago. This volcanic cataclysm knocked humanity down to around 3,000 to 10,000 individuals. It was a breathtaking close call, possibly literally. Yet we have accomplished a lot in the time since, more in the last 15,000 years than ever before. Although, whichever way you slice it, research into the natural history of our species makes our emergence and our success look a lot more like fluke than destiny. So, how did we come to take over? What skill, trait, or ability is it that humans possess which elevates us above and beyond the rest of the natural world? I strongly suspect that it's the same thing that empowered all of our historic adversaries, which is to say, nothing. Or more specifically, nothing special. Every defining aspect of human anatomy, psychology, or behaviour that you could name only makes us different from other animals to an extent. Tool making, for example, seems like an obvious human benchmark, yet we've caught creatures as diverse as crows, monkeys, and octopi, scavenging objects to help them get stuff done. All of the various technological what-have-yous that human ingenuity churns out are really only remarkable in their level of sophistication. Self-awareness, too, can be demonstrated by elephants, dolphins, birds, dogs, and even some fish. It takes a bit of fancy brain wiring to distinguish your own handsome reflection from the presence of a fabulous stranger, but that's all. We have demonstrated that the gift is not exclusively human. Mourning the deceased, farming, recreational sex, monogamy, and even murder for personal gain all have widespread non-human precursors. People have merely taken these behaviours to elaborate cultural extremes through funeral rituals, industrial agriculture, contraception, prostitution, wedding ceremonies, and genocide. We're also not the only creatures to engage in childhood games, symbolic language, and superstitions. Practically every social species ever studied has wowed scientists with an instinct for youthful inquisitiveness, complex communication, and the post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy. See episode 12. It is not clear that anything we'd consider uniquely human counts as an original invention of evolution. Our closest cousins, the chimpanzees, have been conducting what's best described as a musical performance long before there were researchers to observe them. For no other comprehensible reason, remote bands of chimps have developed the local cultural tradition of throwing rocks against acoustically pleasing trees. Year after year they do this, sending the troop into a giddy collective frenzy, leaving the bewildered plants cluttered with rocks and dents. If you don't think these differences amount to much, Matt Ridley points out in his book Genome that, quote, "It's only been around 300,000 generations since the common ancestor of both chimps and humans lived in Central Africa. 5 million years ago seems a long time, but not in generations. Bacteria pack in that many generations in just 25 years. End quote. As far as I can tell, humanity has created no new ways of being or doing, only unparalleled degrees of efficiency, intricacy, and wastage. Still, the difference between humans and other apes does seem huge. We are less hairy, most of us, with distinct head shapes and body proportions. But when we look at how embryos grow, these differences appear trivial. Both humans and chimps each need to build 32 teeth, 5 fingers, 2 eyes, 4 limbs, and a liver. Both need waterproof skin, a 4-chambered heart, and those 3 little bones in the inner ear. All that separates us, really, are developmental tweaks. Once we appreciate that the immune system, digestive system, vascular system, lymphatic system, and nervous system of humans and apes all share identical components, and that there is no bone or organ in your body that can't be found in a chimp's, it would be more shocking to discover that we didn't share a common ancestor. That would be utterly implausible. A smooth path of decreasing anatomical and embryological similarity can be drawn from modern humans back past the great apes, right down through evolution's grand tree of life, or life's chaotically interconnected mycelial mat, if we consider the antics of viruses. Serendipitously, we turned out to be a pretty opportunistic species, which has some perks. Our ancestors managed to cobble together a way of surviving on the harsh African plains that reduced their risk of starvation. In a word, collaboration. By banding together and delegating the chores, small groups of people could bag a high-protein diet without specializing like other carnivores. When hunters came home meatless, gatherers put plants on the table. When fruits and veggies were scarce, the flesh of unlucky sentient creatures kept us alive. At the same time, romantic commitments and sharing food allowed us to forage without neglecting our children. We saw last episode that this kind of cooperation requires big brains to protect against cheats and those who would take advantage of us. Big brains demand calories, and meat used to be one of the most calorific items on any menu. The runaway success of this altruistic system eventually allowed for the emergence of all modern technology and culture. Monogamy is still commendable, if unnecessary. Protecting the vulnerable is still necessary, if unprofitable. Cruelty is still profitable, if widely unrecognized. Human society now explores its division of labour in the most creative and productive ways imaginable, to a point where the exploitation and consumption of other creatures presents no advantage to us whatsoever. Quite the opposite, in fact. It seems that in the process of fighting monsters, humanity itself has become a monster, as Friedrich Nietzsche foretold in his book Beyond Good and Evil, Prelude to a Philosophy of the Future. It's one thing to be aware of the moral and environmental arguments in favour of abandoning animals as food. It's quite another to actually give it up. Why is this? Consider the fact that around 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust during World War II. It's also true that over 200 million land vertebrates are slaughtered every day for people to eat. This would mean that farmed animals only need to possess 3% of a human being's capacity to suffer for the practice to be reasonably compared to a daily Holocaust. And, of course, there doesn't seem to be any real reason to suspect that an animal, like a cow or a chicken, should be able to experience pain or misery any less than a human. In fact, there's an argument to be made that an intelligent species like Homo sapiens can use inference, logic, rationality, and social communication to keep itself safe. Livestock animals who don't possess these cognitive tools would have a much higher reliance on physical and psychological pain to get themselves out of harm's way. This would make intensive farming practices more of a lifelong torment for domesticated animals than a human's mind has the capacity to imagine. Comparisons and considerations such as these ought to horrify people. Yet we're rarely moved to do the right thing by citing numbers or making compassionate appeals. Why not? Perhaps it's because, in 2025 at least, we find that the moral value assigned to another living being is not rooted in its species or race or gender. It's based more on our personal relationship to that person or creature. This makes it rather unhelpful to compare the slaughter of farmed animals to religious genocide. It's the exploitative mindset that needs to be addressed, not the plight of the victims. It's the oppressors that we should be contrasting, not the oppressed. We need to ask, how do citizens of the most enlightened civilizations the world has ever known continue to engage in the worst atrocities on the grandest scales that the planet has ever seen? I won't keep you in suspense. The answer is normalization. According to Alex Hershaft, a Holocaust survivor and co-founder of the Farm Animal Rights Movement, acronym FARM, social norms are what allow everyday people to commit the most heinous war crimes and fund the most unconscionable global industries. These norms are totally arbitrary, yet they dictate which people live and which die during times of conflict. And they dictate which species appear on our plates versus which we keep as pets. Both outcomes are every bit as senseless and unfair. For a variety of reasons, ancient people got themselves into the business of raising animals for food and other products. Certain local species were more immediately suitable for these purposes than others. Over time, our use of animals transitioned from practical, past avoidable, and nestled into perfectly normal. Ask yourself, how long might it have taken for women to be granted equal rights, or for slavery to be abolished, if the victims in either case were unable to speak for themselves? That's the situation we face regarding animal welfare. Despite a rise in veganism and widespread concern over humanity's environmental impact, it is still a depressing minority of people that are actually taking this issue seriously. It may be that introducing cheaper, tastier plant-based alternatives is the only way to replace our demand for meat and dairy. That seems sad, but realistic. Morality alone isn't overriding our ingrained social norms. As things stand, we will still be trying to justify our enthusiasm for animal products to our appalled and incredulous grandchildren. Or we could decide, right now, to stop. Ours could be the first generation, the first culture, and the first dominant species on Earth to reject history's cruel and whimsical facts and stop causing so much unnecessary harm to creatures outside of its own gene pool. That really would be something to be proud of, worth congratulating ourselves over, and might finally mark humanity as something truly unique in Earth's history. I mentioned in passing that veganism might have some good moral and environmental arguments going for it. I wasn't going to rush them because I want people to give them a good, hard thinking about. So next episode I'll cherry pick a few that convinced me and see if they're still convincing 6 years down the line.